Alright guys, so I'm going to teach you how to make a cobia jig. I live in Panama City, Florida, and cobias, fishing is, one of the most popular sports around here. So a lot of guys like to make their own custom jigs. So today I'm going to take you through how to make one. Here's a list of some of the things you're going to need. Probably most important, you're going to need some hair. You can get these deer tails, they're dyed, I like to use orange in most of my jigs. That seems to be one of the best colors of choice. Put tentacles on your jigs. You get these at any tackle store. They're skirts for marlin lures or wahoo lures. You just get them in the package. You can get feathers. Some people like to use feathers. I use a lot of flash in my jigs. I think it helps attract the fish. You can get it at any fly tying shop, Bass Pro, whatever. Jig eyes, you're going to need to use some kind of thread. A lot of guys use wax thread. I don't. And then you're going to need some kind of epoxy. This is just a cement to go over the threads. This is it's not an actual epoxy to put over the jig head. And then of course you're going to need the jig head. Now this one's already been painted and eyes on it and epoxy. This is a really old one, probably 5 years old. I just dug it out so I can show you guys what's going on. So here's actually what the finished product is going to look like. Something like this when you get done with it. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is you're going to make a couple wraps around the shank of the hook. Not around the actual jig itself, because you don't want your threads to build up too thick. So once you make a couple wraps around it, you're going to put the tentacles on either side of the hook, either side of the shank of the hook. And you're just going to start wrapping. Okay, get you a few wraps around and then just start filling it in, strengthen it up. Alright, you're going to cut it a little bit long. And what you want to do is just make you a couple half hitches in your thread just to cinch it down. And pull that tight. Take a little bit of your cement. Just dab that on the threads so it'll harden them up. And that takes care of the tentacles. Alright, so next we're going to put the feathers on. I'm going to add some feathers to this jig. So you just kind of put it on the side of the jig. You want to start your first couple wraps loose so they don't move the feathers. But then once you get them on there, you can go ahead and start wrapping. You want to wrap towards the back of the feathers, towards the hook, so they poof out. Make sure it's really tight. Alright, next, I got the feathers on both sides. Next we're going to put a little bit of flash. Normally I like to do a lot, but on this jig, we're just going to do a little bit. So, get your flash and lay it right on the top of the jig, in between the feathers. Start off with your loose wraps, and then tighten up. And then you can kind of move it around and get it positioned how you want it. But once you got it there, go ahead and put your some tight wraps in there. Alright, we got the flash on there. Next thing we're going to do is do the deer hair. Now the deer hair is the hardest part, because you really got to keep a tight grip on it. Otherwise it just spreads out everywhere and goes crazy. So you're going to grab it at the base. Snip you off some. Try to get it as tight as you can with your fingers. You're going to just put it on the jig. Start off with your loose wraps. And then start to get tight with it. Now don't worry if the hair gets too far forward because we're gonna trim that off later. So just get you some wraps in there. Wrap towards the hook and really try to go as tight as you can without breaking the thread. It makes the hair poof up. Alright, so we got the hair all the way around. As you can see, it's kind of messy up top, so I'm taking this knife and just going right on this front side of my threads, and I'm just cutting down into the jig head. I'm just cutting a lot of that hair away, just to kind of give it a clean look. That way it's not all rough looking. Alright, so what I'm doing now, after I got done cutting all the hair up front, there's a little gap in between from where the epoxy is to where my thread started. So I'm taking the thread and I'm filling in that gap to make it where the threads are even all the way from the head to where the threads end. Alright, so I got all my holes filled in. A lot of people like the hair to really poof out from the jig, and what you got to do is, instead of wrapping back forward towards the head, you got to wrap towards the hook so it cinches all that hair. Alright, so we're just finishing up these last few wraps here, just to get it nice and clean looking. We're going to do the same thing we did with the tentacles. We're going to cut it long. And make a couple half hitches. Just wrap it through the hole 4 or 5 times. This thread's super thin, so it's hard to work with. But once you get it wrapped through, like so, just take it and cinch it down just like that. And cut your excess off. Now take it out and look it over just to make sure there's nothing hanging out. If there is, just pick it off wherever. And that's basically it. Last step we're gonna do, take a little bit of our cement here. You're gonna put that over the threads. It'll harden up and keep the water from soaking down in the threads, loosening them up. Now you can get as fancy or as basic as you want with these things. This is just a really quick way to tie up a jig if you need one on the run. It is March. Cobia season is getting into full swing here in the Panhandle, so. And that's it. Got you a green and orange cobia jig with some feathers. Got your tentacles and your flash. And that's ready to go. And that's how you tie a custom cobia jig. We'll be looking forward to seeing you out there. So here's some of the other jigs that we made. You know, you got your eyes on there. As you can see, I like to use a lot of orange. Like I said earlier, it seems to be one of the better colors out there as far as what they like. You know, these jigs get real expensive if you're gonna buy custom jigs in a tackle shop. These things run anywhere from, you know, $12 to $15 a piece. So, you know, learning how to tie your own jigs save you a lot of money. And you don't have to always use, you know, deer hair and stuff. That stuff's really messy and it's hard to get a handle on when you're first starting out. Like these jigs right here, you know, these are just all tentacles and flash. There's no deer hair whatsoever. Very easy to tie, and really quick actually. So, you know, just experiment. That's what I started doing. My first jig didn't even look like a jig when I got done with it, so